While my cousins celebrated their new fortunes at my grandfather's funeral, I stood quietly holding a wrinkled envelope with a single plane ticket inside. Everyone laughed at me that day. 6 months later, they were the ones asking for forgiveness. My name is Nathan Whitmore, and this is how the worst day of my life turned into the beginning of everything I didn't know I was missing. But first, let me introduce the key players in the game my grandfather set in motion, long after he was gone. There was Preston, my older cousin, wearing a $5,000 Armani suit, already practicing his victory speech for the company employees. His sister Mallory was hiding her excitement behind oversized designer sunglasses, probably deciding which Instagram filter would best show off her new yacht. Their parents Vernon and Beatrice looked like vultures, finally circling their feast, my uncle already reaching for the documents in the lawyer's hands. And then there was me, a high school history teacher who had driven 3 hours in an old Honda Civic with failing brakes just to say goodbye to the only person in the family who ever truly understood me. Grandfather Roland had built an empire from nothing, turning a single fishing boat into Whitmore Shipping Industries. Everyone wanted a share of his kingdom. Everyone except me. All I wanted was one more chess game, with the man who taught me that the smartest moves are the ones no one sees coming. That funeral wasn't just about saying farewell to Roland Whitmore. It was the day I learned that sometimes the smallest gift hides the biggest secret, and that those laughing at you might be standing on ground ready to collapse beneath them. My alarm went off at 5:30 a.m., like it had every weekday for the past 6 years I'd been teaching at Lincoln High School in Detroit. The same ceiling stain I'd stared at for 3 years still looked vaguely like Texas if you squinted. My neighbor's dog barked right on time, and through the thin walls I could hear Mrs. Chen starting her morning exercises. That was my life routine, modest and nothing like the world I'd been born into. Being a Whitmore meant something in certain circles. Yacht clubs, private schools, and summer houses. For me it meant deciding between fixing my car or paying rent because I'd chosen to teach about the Revolutionary War instead of chasing profit margins. My father Dennis had understood that choice. He was the only one who ever did. Dad died when I was 15, heart attack at his desk, while reviewing contracts for Vernon's division of the company. He'd been the responsible one, the quiet one, the man who never complained when Vernon took credit for his ideas. His last words to me were, "Nathan, don't let them turn you into something you're not. Your grandfather did that to me. Look where I am." 3 hours later, he was gone. My mother Grace, a nurse at Detroit General, worked 12-hour shifts to keep us afloat. We later learned Dad had signed away most of his shares to help Vernon cover bad investments. That was just who he was, always cleaning up after others, always believing family came before everything. Mom never spoke harshly about it, but at Dad's funeral, the look she gave Vernon said everything words couldn't. Grandfather Roland was a man of mystery in a 3-piece suit. After World War II, he used his Navy discharge pay to buy a fishing boat, and by the time I was born, he owned fleets of cargo ships and warehouses across a dozen cities. Yet he never believed in giving, only in earning. Each birthday card came with a $20 bill and a note. Make it worth more. Every Christmas, he gave practical gifts, business books or accounting courses. The only time he seemed genuinely interested in me was during our Sunday chess games. They began when I was 10, after I won my school's chess tournament. He'd shown up at our apartment, set up a board, and said, "Show me what you've got." I lost in 12 moves, but he came back every Sunday after that, and the games became our tradition. "You play like your father," he once told me. "Too focused on protecting your pieces, not enough on winning." I'd answered, "Maybe I don't want to sacrifice everything just to win." He smiled, the first real smile I'd ever seen from him. "Maybe that's why you're the only one who still interests me, Nathan." Preston never understood those games. He was too busy shadowing grandfather at the office, earning his MBA from Wharton, just like Roland, and reminding everyone of it at every family dinner. Every conversation turned into a business lecture about market optimization and strategic acquisitions. Mallory took a different path. She became a social media shipping heiress, flaunting designer outfits and yachts to hundreds of thousands of followers. She called it building her brand, but really she was just spending grandfather's money while waiting for more. And then there was me, grading history essays at a garage sale kitchen table, finding more meaning in my modest life than they ever could. That was my world before the funeral, before the envelope, before everything changed. Vernon and Beatrice were the perfect power couple, at least from the outside. Vernon, the CFO of Whitmore Shipping, relied heavily on his assistant, while Beatrice attended charity galas mainly to appear in the society pages. Their mansion was so big, they needed intercoms to communicate. The Rochester Country Club felt suffocating that October afternoon. Grandfather had requested that his will be read in the same oak-paneled room where he once closed million-dollar deals. The mahogany table reflected our faces like a dark mirror. Preston adjusted his Rolex for the third time in 5 minutes. After the muddy graveside service, Beatrice had complained non-stop about her ruined shoes. "Before we begin," said Mr. Harwick, the family attorney, adjusting his glasses. Roland reviewed this will 1 week before he passed. Vernon leaned forward, eager. "We understand. Roland and I discussed the succession plan extensively. That was a lie, and everyone knew it. Grandfather never shared business plans outside the office, but Vernon had told everyone he'd be CEO, with Preston as his second in command. To my eldest son, Vernon Whitmore, and his wife Beatrice, I leave the estate in the Hamptons and the investment account ending in 471. Beatrice's eyes lit up. The Hamptons house. Oh, Vernon, he remembered. "Let's proceed," Harwick said, opening the leather folder. "To my grandson Preston Whitmore, I leave Whitmore Shipping Industries and all its operational assets, on the condition he maintains current employment levels for 1 year. Preston shot to his feet, chair scraping the floor. "I knew it, Grandfather. I won't let you down. To my granddaughter, Mallory Whitmore, I leave the Manhattan penthouse on Central Park West and the yacht Serenity." Mallory squealed. "The penthouse, the yacht, my followers are going to lose it." Then Harwick turned to me. His eyes softened. "And to my grandson, Nathan Whitmore, I leave this." He handed me a small white envelope, my name scrawled in Grandfather's handwriting. The room fell silent before Preston burst into laughter. "An envelope? Seriously?" I opened it carefully. Inside was a single plane ticket, one way to Rome, departing in 48 hours. Preston snatched it before I could stop him. "Coach, too. That's priceless. The teacher gets a vacation." Mallory recorded it on her phone. "Nathan, this is hilarious. Maybe he left you some frequent flyer miles." Vernon straightened his tie. "At least he gave you something, Nathan. Rome is beautiful this time of year." Beatrice added sweetly, "A trip to help you process everything." How thoughtful. From the corner, my mother finally spoke. "Is that everything, Mr. Harwick?" "Yes," he said, "except a personal letter for Nathan to be opened upon arrival in Rome." "Enough," Vernon said, though he was smiling. Nathan chose his path. Grandfather respected that. Preston laughed again. "What's he going to say? Sorry you're broke, enjoy the pizza?" I looked at the ticket. October 15th, 3 p.m., Flight 61. Why Rome? Grandfather had never mentioned Italy in all our chess games. "Still," I said, "I guess I'd better pack." "You're actually going?" Mallory asked. "Using your sick days for some random trip?" Vernon shook his head. "Sentimental fool, just like your father." That was when I knew I'd board that plane. Because Vernon had been wrong about my father, wrong about me, and maybe wrong about Grandfather too. "He gave me a ticket," I replied. "The least I can do is use it." That night, I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the plane ticket beside my laptop, showing a balance of $1,847. Rent due in 5 days, car in need of brakes, essays to grade. Every logical thought said going to Rome was insane, but I couldn't stop hearing Grandfather's voice. As I walked out of the country club, their laughter echoing behind me, I remembered Grandfather's last chess lesson. "The best moves, Nathan, are the ones your opponent never sees coming." During our last game, 2 weeks before he died, he'd asked, "What do you know about trust?" "It's earned, not given," I'd answered, his favorite saying. "No," he said softly. Real trust is following even when you don't understand why. Now, holding that ticket, his words felt like instructions. I called my mother. "I'm going," I said. "I knew you would," she replied. "Your grandfather called me last month. He didn't say much, only that I should support whatever choice you make after the funeral." "Mom, this is crazy. I can't miss work." "Nathan," she said, "your father once told me that Roland wasn't always the man we knew. Maybe this is about who he was before." When one of my students, Jasmine, asked if I was okay, I smiled. "Just thinking about history, Jasmine. How the most important moments often look ordinary when they happen." The next morning, I arranged a substitute at Lincoln High. My principal wasn't thrilled but allowed 3 days off. 3 days to go to Rome and figure out what game my grandfather was still playing. I packed light, a carry-on with 2 changes of clothes, and my father's old leather journal. The Uber to Detroit Metro cost me $32. I didn't have to spare, but there was no turning back. When the flight attendant offered drinks, I asked for water. As I opened it, I remembered another of grandfather's lessons. He'd once sacrificed his queen to win. I'd been stunned. "Power," he'd said, "isn't about what you have, it's about what you're willing to lose to gain something greater." Seat 32B. Middle, of course. The man beside me snored. The woman hogged both armrests. As Detroit disappeared below, I thought of my cousins, all celebrating their inheritance, and me, headed toward a mystery I couldn't afford. Yet, somehow, it felt right. At the gate, I noticed something I'd missed on the envelope. A small pencil mark, 1947. The year grandfather was 22, just after the war. Before I could dwell on it, boarding began. As the plane turned east into the night sky, I realized my cousins thought they'd already won. But I had a feeling grandfather's real game was just beginning, and I was the only one he'd chosen to play it. The wheels touched down at Rome's Fiumicino Airport at exactly 3:07 p.m., local time. My legs were stiff, my back sore, and I'd barely slept through the 8-hour flight. Italian and English announcements echoed through the cabin as we taxied to the gate. That's when reality sank in. I was in Rome, with no plan, no hotel, and no idea what I was supposed to do next. Immigration was a blur of lines and questions. "Purpose of visit?" the officer asked, in accented English. "Honestly, I'm not sure," I said, too tired to come up with anything better. He raised an eyebrow, but stamped my passport anyway. "Welcome to Italy." I followed the crowd to baggage claim, even though all I had was my carry-on. The arrivals hall was chaos, families reuniting, drivers holding name cards, tourists fumbling with maps. I was about to walk toward the exit when I saw it, a sign, neatly printed, with my name, Nathan Whitmore. A man in a black suit held it. I hesitated, then walked over. "I'm Nathan Whitmore," I said. Relief spread across his face. "Mr. Whitmore, finally. Please, come quickly." His English was clear but heavily accented. "Who sent you?" I asked as he took my bag. "Your grandfather," he replied simply. "He arranged everything months ago. My name is Lorenzo. Please, we have a long drive." He led me outside to a sleek black Mercedes that probably cost more than my yearly salary. The October air was warm, a sharp contrast to Detroit's autumn chill. Lorenzo opened the door, and I sank into leather seats, softer than clouds. "Where are we going?" I asked. "To the Montuori estate, 1 hour north in the Sabine Hills." 45 years. That would mean since 1980, long before I was born. None of it made sense. Lorenzo met my eyes in the rearview mirror. Mr. Roland owned the estate for 45 years. He came every September, always alone. "I don't understand. My grandfather never mentioned any estate in Italy." "How did you know my grandfather?" I asked. We drove out of the city, trading Rome's dense streets for rolling hills covered in vineyards and olive groves. The landscape was breathtaking, like a scene from an old Italian film. Lorenzo drove with confident speed, the kind that made me grip the door handle on every turn. My father was his driver before me. When he died, I took over. I've driven Mr. Roland for 20 years. 20 years of annual visits. Visits no one in the family knew about. What else had grandfather kept hidden? Lorenzo parked near the entrance. Before I could process what I was seeing, the heavy wooden doors opened, and an elderly woman stepped out. Her posture was graceful, her silver hair pulled back neatly, and her eyes, the same steel gray as my grandfather's, filled with tears. The road narrowed as we entered a small village. Old men sat outside a cafe, watching us pass in silence. Soon, we turned onto a private lane lined with tall cypress trees. At the end stood massive iron gates that opened automatically. Beyond them, a villa appeared. 3 stories of honey-colored stone with terraced gardens and sweeping views of the valley. She walked slowly toward me. Lorenzo spoke softly. "Nathan, meet your grandmother, Sophia Whitmore." Sophia took my hands, her grip firm despite her age. "Your American grandmother did, yes. But I am very much alive." Her voice carried a gentle Italian melody, her English precise but old-fashioned. She studied my face with a trembling smile. "You have his eyes," she whispered, "and your father's kindness. Come inside, Nathan. There's much to tell you." The world tilted. I reached for the car to steady myself. "That's impossible," I said. "My grandmother died before I was born." Inside, the villa was elegant but simple. Nothing like the extravagant Whitmore mansions back home. She led me to a sitting room lined with photographs. My breath caught. In one picture, grandfather stood young and laughing beside a woman in a wedding gown. "We married in 1947, Sophia said quietly. "Roland came to Italy with the Navy and stayed after the war to help rebuild. We met at a dance in Rome. He was charming, ambitious, full of dreams. We started with nothing. Just a few acres of vines his friends sold us for almost nothing." She poured 2 glasses of deep red wine from a crystal decanter. "This is from our vineyard. Eredità. It means inheritance." The wine was rich, full, alive. "I don't understand," I said. "He had an entire life here?" "He left you," I said quietly. "More than a life, Caro. He had a family. Me, our son Augusto, and grandchildren he never met because he chose America instead." My hands trembled. "He lived a lie." "The Korean War began," she replied with no bitterness, only sorrow. "Roland felt duty-bound to return. He was supposed to be gone for 6 months. But he met your American grandmother while on leave. She was pregnant with Vernon. A good man would have divorced me. But Roland couldn't bear to abandon either family, so he kept both. Separate. Secret." "No, Nathan," she said softly. "He lived 2 truths. He loved us both, just in different ways. He sent money, visited every year, but he could never choose. Not until now." She walked to an antique desk and pulled out a thick folder. "This," she said, handing it to me, "is Whitmore Vineyards International, 47 million in assets. He left it all to you." Inside the folder were deeds, contracts, bank statements, proof that grandfather had built another empire in Italy. But then Sophia opened an old laptop and played a video. It was grandfather. His face filled the screen. Older but calm, almost peaceful. "Nathan, if you're watching this, it means you trusted me enough to take the flight. Good. You were always the only one who understood that some things matter more than money. I gave them exactly what they valued. Empty prizes that look golden from the outside. But you, Nathan, you never asked for anything. You chose teaching over wealth because you wanted purpose. So I'm giving you what you never requested. Truth, family, and wealth that's real. Your cousins got what they wanted, the illusion of success. But illusions fade. Whitmore Shipping has been losing money for 3 years. I've hidden the losses, but Preston's inheriting a sinking ship. The penthouse has 3 mortgages. The yacht is leased, the Hamptons estate, the bank owns most of it. The vineyard produces 2 million bottles a year. The villa has stood for 3 centuries. Your uncle Augusto manages it with honesty and skill. His children Marco and Elena are good people, nothing like Preston and Mallory. This is your true inheritance, a family that works, land that provides, and a legacy built on truth. One last thing, Nathan. Preston will call you within a month. Broke, desperate, asking for help. Be kinder to him than he was to you. That's what makes you better. Checkmate, my boy. He leaned closer to the camera, that familiar sharpness in his eyes. The video ended. Sophia placed a hand on my shoulder. He talked about you every visit, she said softly. Stories about his grandson, the teacher who valued meaning over money. I stayed in Italy for 3 weeks, learning everything. My uncle Augusto looked so much like my father that it hurt to see him. He ran the vineyard quietly but efficiently, never bitter about being the hidden son. My cousins Marco and Elena welcomed me as if I'd always belonged. They taught me about wine, about the land, and about the version of my grandfather they'd known. He was different here, Elena said one evening as we walked through the vines. Happier. He worked with his hands, laughed more. Not the businessman you knew. For a full minute, I just stared at the screen. Grandfather's voice echoed in my head. Preston will call you within a month. Broke, desperate, asking for help. 3 weeks later, I was sitting on the terrace of the Monturi estate, watching the morning mist rise over the vineyards, when my phone buzzed. The caller ID read, Preston Whitmore. I answered, Preston. I leaned back in the chair. That's a sentence I never thought I'd hear from you. His voice was tight, panicked. Nathan, thank God. You need to help me. Please. This isn't funny, he said sharply, then broke off with a shaky breath. The company's collapsing. The accounts are frozen. Investors are pulling out, and the board's threatening to remove me. Uncle Vernon's blaming me for everything. I thought I did. But there's something else. The financials, there are missing assets, overseas accounts I can't access. Grandfather's name keeps coming up in Italian registries, but I can't get any answers. I thought you said you had everything under control, I replied evenly. I glanced at the vineyard stretching before me, sunlight glinting off the rows of grapes. Maybe that's because you're looking in the wrong place. What are you talking about? I let a silence stretch. Grandfather didn't just build a company in America. He built something else here, something real. He left me in charge of it. More than a vineyard. A legacy he trusted me to protect. So that's it? Preston's voice rose. You get to play farmer while I lose everything? The line went quiet. You're joking, he finally said. A vineyard? That's what this is about? He did love you, I said softly. He just knew love isn't always the same as trust. I sighed. You got what you wanted, Preston. Titles, power, a company that looks great on paper, but was built on debt and ego. I got what grandfather valued most, the truth. He didn't respond right away. When he spoke again, his voice was smaller. I didn't know, Nathan. I thought he loved me more. Help you, I finished for him. Grandfather told me you'd call, and he told me to be kinder than you were to me. So yes, Preston, I'll help, but not by giving you money. You'll come here, work, learn what real inheritance looks like. He laughed bitterly. You want me to pick grapes? I don't suppose there's any chance you could. There was a long pause, then a quiet, broken okay. I want you to understand what it means to earn something. You'll have a place to stay, food, a chance to start over. That's more than most people get. When the call ended, Sophia stepped out onto the terrace with 2 cups of espresso. He called? She asked. She smiled knowingly. Then maybe, Caro, this is how the game ends. I nodded, just like grandfather said he would. Preston arrived 2 weeks later. Gone was the tailored suit and polished confidence. He looked tired, haunted, even. His arrogance had been stripped away, leaving only exhaustion. Meanwhile, I worked alongside him, learning from my Italian family. The vineyard became more than a place. It became a bridge between 2 worlds that had never been meant to meet. Augusto greeted him kindly, giving him simple clothes and assigning him to help in the fields. The first day, Preston nearly fainted from the heat. By the third, he stopped complaining. By the second week, he started asking questions about the soil, the vines, the craft. For the first time in his life, he was listening. At night, I'd walk through the vines under the stars, feeling closer to grandfather than I ever had when he was alive. I began writing about what I was learning about legacy, truth, and the way wealth can blind as much as it can build. I didn't realize it then, but those journal entries would become a book, The Inheritance of Silence. Sophia smiled. Roland would be proud. You have both found what he wanted for you. One evening, Sophia joined us for dinner on the terrace. Preston sat quietly, sipping wine, his hands calloused and stained from work. He looked up at me and said, "You were right, Nathan. I thought power made me strong. Turns out, humility does." I thought about that as the sun dipped below the hills, turning the sky gold and violet. For all his flaws and secrets, grandfather had known what he was doing. He hadn't just divided his fortune, he'd tested our character. Back in America, news broke that Whitmore Shipping had filed for restructuring. Vernon retired under pressure. Beatrice disappeared to Europe. Mallory sold her yacht and began a quiet life somewhere in California. But in Italy, the vines kept growing, steady and faithful. I taught history classes at a local university a few days a week, spending the rest of my time at the vineyard with Augusto and Preston, the teacher and the heir, learning side by side. And I'd smile back, because maybe that was grandfather's final lesson. He'd once told me during a chess game, "Every move tells a story, Nathan. The question is, do you want yours to be about winning or about understanding why you played it all?" Sometimes, tourists would visit the estate, unaware of the story behind it. They'd sip the wine, smile, and say, "You can taste the honesty in it." So when I finally bottled my first wine under my own label, I named it Checkmate, not as an ending, but as a tribute to the man who taught me that every loss hides a victory, and every ending is just a different kind of beginning. And that's how the worst day of my life, the day of my grandfather's funeral, became the day he started teaching me again, from half a world away. Now I understood. The end.